Good morning, everybody. Welcome along to day 2 of Cloud Security Week here at Bytes this week. So we've got another packed day today. Apologies, I have to address the elephant in the room. Apologies for our slight technical issues yesterday afternoon. I know that some of you did miss out on kind of 1.5 speakers worth of live session yesterday afternoon. We have put that up as a recorded session, or it will be up as a recorded session. We all hung around and recorded it last night. So thank you for your patience on all of that. And hopefully we won't have any issues today. The internet is a wonderful thing when it works, which I think is obviously part of what we're here to talk about this week. And my clicker isn't working, which is really helpful. So if somebody can just advance me on to the next slide, that would be great. Oh, now it's doing it. There we go. Right. There we go, we're up and running. First technical itch of the day, so hopefully that's my last one. I can live with that. So what we're here to discuss, I've said this to a number of times now, it's quite difficult to make this intro sound different every time for those of you that are on all of the sessions, while still providing all the essential information for those that haven't been on all of the sessions. But ultimately, cloud as a thing can mean anything to any business. It doesn't mean the same thing to every business. In fact, I don't think it means the same thing to any two businesses. The exact percentage of on-premise cloud versus public cloud and how many public clouds you're using will be very different on the sliding scale for every single business. And what we're trying to do this week is give you, our customers, and hopefully those of you out there that are thinking about working with us, some ideas on how you can address your challenges and how you can work with the cloud in the most effective way. Just really to give you some ideas and some stuff to take away. My clicker is being really dumb today. Come on, catch up. Bless it. Can somebody just advance me onto the next slide, please? Thank you. So housekeeping, just so you all know, obviously, we're probably working at home. So your fire exits are however you get out your own house. There will be polls and questions throughout. In fact, there's probably one on the screen at the moment as we speak, which will be asking how much coffee you've had. I haven't had enough yet. By late morning on the second session, I will have had enough, and then I normally switch to water in the afternoon. So yeah, I'll give you my 3 answers in advance. Please do ask us questions. We had a couple of sessions yesterday that were very question heavy. We had one session yesterday that's very question light. So please do ask questions. This is your opportunity to get as much out of this as possible. So please ask questions as you go along. At the very bottom of your screen, there is a feedback button. Please use the feedback button to provide us feedback on the sessions. There is £100 vouchers available on a draw for anybody that does provide feedback. But if you don't provide us any feedback, we can't improve these sessions for the future. So please, 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 please do provide some feedback for us. And obviously all the sessions are being recorded and will be available online. So moving on with what we're covering off today, if we can just have the next slide up, please. This is today's session, or this morning's session, shall I say, that we're covering off. Got 3 speakers today, which makes it quite difficult to keep it on time, but we will do our best. We have Nick Lyons from Microsoft, who was one of our speakers yesterday, Richard Beckett from Sophos, and Stuart Green from Checkpoint. And we're going to take you on a little bit of a journey today. I'm sure those of you that have worked in the industry or been exposed to getting 3 vendors on a call simultaneously was challenging yesterday afternoon, and it was challenging this morning to make sure that we had a journey to talk through that you could all get some value out of. But I think we achieved it. I'm not going to ruin the surprises, but we're definitely taking you on a journey on this morning's session and working through everything. So it should all be good. Just a quick introduction to Bytes and the security practice specifically within Bytes, which I kind of represent all the practices within Bytes, but the security practice is obviously what we're here to talk about. This is Cloud Security Week. 65 staff are contained within the security practice, plus it has to be said a few more now from when I created this slide a little while ago. And we took the security practice was born out of combination of 2 areas. It was born out of some cloud security, a cloud security practice effectively that was within Bytes Software Services, and the pure play security business that was Bytes Security Partnerships. So Bytes security partnerships came into existence as boring old security partnerships in 1999. I've actually worked for that business since January the 17th, 2000. So pretty much a lifer, which is very unusual in this industry for those of you that have worked in it for a while. And we were bought by Bytes on the 1st of August 2011. And we continued our merry way as an independent business, but working with the Bytes customer database. But we really got to a point that such was the overlap between all the different areas, it made no sense for the business for the group within the UK to maintain a pure play security business anymore. So on the 1st of March last year, we integrated the security business into the main Bytes software services business. And that leaves us in a very strong position, and actually with a service offering that I think really stands up there and stands out in the UK market. So we have all of the procurement and licensing specialism that Bytes Software Services always had, and has made Bytes there or thereabouts as Microsoft's top reseller in the UK for a number of the last 25 years that we've really been in existence and working with Microsoft. It might even be longer than that. It might be 30 years, but I'm always a bit fuzzy on the number where it is between 25 and 30 years. But on top of that, Bytes aren't always seen as being a technical business, but we actually have a very broad and very strong technical delivery group. We obviously have the security business. We have all of the 24/7 support desk, which is direct to engineer, third line support. We also have implementation for security services. We have a cloud implementation team delivering cloud security services and Microsoft cloud services. We have a whole software asset management and optimization team. We have managed security within the portfolio. So we have managed SOC, managed NOC, managed firewalls, managed MDR, managed SIM, et cetera, so a really, really broad scope of services. But we also have our cyber consulting business, and it's the cyber consulting business that really brings this all together for me and makes us stand out. We are, as part of that business unit, we are a full PCI QSA. We are an ISF benchmark and audit business. We can do pen testing, and we can also do full forensics and incident response. And it has to be said, over the last 12 months, and what is, the world that we now live in, as I called out yesterday, it's not the new world anymore. I've got to stop calling it that. It's just the world now. The number of incidents we're dealing with from a forensics and incident response point of view is just absolutely massive. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. And it's challenging, but we bring together that whole service portfolio, and it's a very, very strong offering when you put it all together. We're here today. I mean, we've said Azure security. It's actually public cloud security we're here today. But obviously, Nick is from Microsoft, so we will be talking about Azure in terms of the background. But most businesses don't use one cloud. This is my point here. Even a business that is just using Microsoft for their public cloud will still have almost certainly some on-premise elements to it. It is a hybrid cloud. And as soon as you start talking about hybrid stuff, and as soon as you start talking about how all that fits together, you have to think about the number of places you have to configure things, the number of things you have to do, and how you take all of that and how you put all of that together. And that's really what's important about this session today, and how we're going to take you on this journey. Because really securing hybrid cloud and making sure you're making use of all of the different security tools that are available to you is really, really important. There is no right or wrong answer to this. Like I said, we're here to tell you what we think today. But the biggest thing with this is human beings. And we're actually going to have just a little bit of a panel discussion for 5 to 10 minutes here. The biggest bit here is human beings, because in 2 years, and in fact, this is probably 18 months now from when Gartner issued this. So 18 months to 12 months, Gartner predicts that 95% of cloud breaches will simply be down to misconfiguration. Now, the thing I find fascinating about that is you take into account the misconfiguration element and how that works. And what you actually find is that, and you can tell this is a live session because somebody's just arrived at my door that I have to get somebody else to deal with. So I'm just going to send a message, and then I'm going to leave somebody else to deal with that, because I am not leaving my desk. In this time, 95% of cloud breaches will be down to misconfiguration. It's as simple as that. And that's despite all the tools, all the vendor tools, all of the native tools being available 95% of breaches will be down to people just not using them properly and not doing the right thing. So at this point, I'm going to bring the panel in and we can talk about this a second and how we deal with it. I will probably have to go and just answer the door quickly, which is really embarrassing. But what I'm going to do is we're going to go round the squares because we can do this. So because we have a whole team running this, I can ask myself to be taken off camera for a second, and then I can hand over to one of the guys to be the first point, and we can make it look like none of this is actually happening or going wrong from my point of view this morning. So Nick, if we work through these in the order that we're doing the sessions, regarding what I've just said, how do Microsoft tackle that? What's Microsoft's view on it?
It's a great question. Lots of different ways is my answer to that, but I think the underpinning of this and the session that I'm going to talk about is largely looking at making sure you're actively looking for that misconfiguration and you're actively looking for human errors. So again, it's not just around this protection, it's also around detection and response, and not only in activities but also in configuration. So yeah, I'm going to talk about secure score, so I'm not going to spoil my own thunder there. But for me, things like Microsoft Secure Score and Azure Secure Score can really help you to identify where people have configured things incorrectly, and then add into that behavior analytics, and you can see where people are doing things that they shouldn't be doing too. So it's a multi-layer defense, I think, approach to that, David.
Thank you, Nick. There you go. It's as if I never went anywhere. Fantastic. Love it. So, taking on that point, Nick, and moving onto you, Richard, what's your thinking on this in terms of the people element and what we can do to try and deal with these? Yeah, just try and deal with it.
Yeah, and I think it is a lot down to the people element, as you mentioned. So, and the main point of feedback that we get from our customers, and again, we're all kind of spoiler alerts for our sessions today, but is down to the cloud being quite a busy, noisy place. There are a lot of, as you say, there are a lot of tools out there, and they are by default secure in a lot of cases. And so someone's going in and changing something. The challenge that we tend to find, and this is from our own teams who are managing their own cloud platforms, is where do I focus? How do I see what I need to fix? How do I find those configurations to start with? How do I identify what's the biggest risk? And how do I go about remediating that? Because teams are going to be moving from different accounts, different UI. You're going to have multiple different teams around the organization. Maybe if you've got a DevOps team, for instance, all introducing change and risk into that environment. So how do I, stack rank what I need to fix and fast before it gets compromised? So I think it's that ability to prioritize and fill any skill gaps with either automated or detailed remediation steps is the key for a lot of our customers. And this is new, right? This is a new space as well in terms of configurations. It's in terms of cloud configurations, it can be tricky to do. So a lot of people are getting skilled up with it.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. And Stuart, your thinking?
Much the same as the other guys. I think there are going to be a lot of common themes running throughout the day. I guess the first point is that cloud isn't inherently insecure. That's something which a lot of people float around saying that public cloud is a dangerous, scary place. It's just new. There's a lot of new configurations. There's a lot of new services, tools, workflows, and things that, because people see how friendly and how accessible it can be, they just have a go at it. And that's something that I'm going to cover in the session that I've got coming up as well. But kind of behind all of that, I think one of the biggest challenges is keeping track of what's going on and keeping visibility of what you're doing in these broad environments. So yes, you need to give your users and your staff a bit of freedom in going off and exploring and working with these new services. But the key behind keeping safe with all of that is keeping track of what they're doing and having the insight or the oversight rather to be able to keep track of what they're doing and secure it effectively.
Okay, thank you. And as you say, oversight. I mean, I guess the theme for me really for today a little bit as well, which is hence why we have the layers, is, and we'll just kind of like 30 seconds from each of you on this point. We can give them all the tools in the world, but people have this nasty habit of feeling they know better, right? And therefore they ignore what's there and they think, I don't need to worry about that alert because. I mean, for me, that's probably the single biggest problem. This human element of I know better than than the electronic thing that's in front of me. Is that something you all see as well? Nick, to you first.
To a certain extent, yes, but I'd say that the way we approach that is through there's a whole different amount to unpick on that one. But when we come to augmentation of humans, we look at augmentation of capacity and augmentation of capability. So we're trying to always make sure that whatever we present to a SecOps professional isn't this is what you need to do. It's this is something that for you to get your teeth into. All the boring stuff's been taken care of. This is what you need to get your teeth into. That's on the alerting side of things. But on the configuration side of things, again, it's trying to take the emotion out of it to say, this looks like it might not be optimal. Review and making those suggestions to the Secure Score in a way that helps people understand the impact of what they have done now and what would happen if they remediate. So again, trying to put, I know this sounds like marketing, but this sort of people-centric approach really is important to make sure people don't rail against the machine, to say, actually, I know best. Exactly to your point, David. We are all humans after all. So,
Richard.
And I think to a similar point, really. I mean, the 95% stat gets bandied around a lot, and it's almost it's like saying this ransomware attack cost someone $15 billion. It can be quite unrelatable, and I think it's down to us in a lot of cases to make sense of what a misconfiguration is and what the impact can be as well. So helping people to understand, if I've got a development platform, if I take hard drive snapshots and leave them on that development platform, what can happen? Like, what is a misconfiguration? It's new, so let's break it down and not just talk about big stats that are scary, but also understand what the impact of different misconfigurations are, so people can start to prioritize them. Because I think the media in particular will latch on to things like shared storage, but and I think people understand that now. It's moving into more areas like access control, and these sort of like identity access management, I think, are the new kind of areas we really need to help demystify a little there.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. And Stuart, last but not least, before we start with the presentations.
Yeah, again, agree with everything that's been said. There are going to be some definitely common themes running through throughout the day, throughout all the presentations. I don't know that it's so much I know best. A lot of people are quite quick to admit that what they're doing might not be in line with best practices, but it's more something that I've seen in the old firewall days, obviously coming from a checkpoint background, of let's get it working first and we'll worry about securing it later. So you end up with public storage facilities in public cloud, web servers which aren't secured, and a number of other services that are available in the public cloud platforms that are completely functional, and the customers that are using them get their offering out on the internet very quickly, but security is tomorrow's problem, and they worry about it, hopefully not too late before somebody else notices it, but it's not a now issue, it's a later issue, but later never comes.
Yeah, which is very much the point. Right, okay, guys, let's move on. We're pretty much on time still, which is good. So I'm going to hand over to Nick. Let me just confirm. There we go. That's just happened for me magically, which is good. So you're going to find the poll around coffee will have disappeared, and there will be a poll coming up for Nick just towards the end of his presentation, probably about 5 minutes before the end of his presentation, for you guys to respond to. So if you can ping that, respond to that rather when we see it come up, that'd be great. And I will shut up and hand over to you, Nick.
Thank you very much, David. Let's see if we can make this clicker thing work and give you 15 minutes on Azure security. So buckle up. This is going to be a bit of a whistle-stop tour. But first of all, some positioning. So again, going back to everything that's just been said, what we at Microsoft approach and how we approach security nowadays is with a zero trust piece. This underpins everything we do, and it's from a user perspective or any employee perspective, all the way through to the way we design software. So it's formed the strategy that we've had for the past few years, and we're explicitly calling out, and I think it's very relevant to this session because it's been our number one recommendation for dealing with Solorigate and other similar incidents. So quickly in a minute, what does zero trust mean to Microsoft? It's not new, it's not unique to Microsoft. I'm sure everyone will mention it today, but for us, and this is where the interesting bit gets in, it's what you mean by zero trust. And we see it as three things: moving from assumption to explicit verification, adopting a policy-based least privileged access model that gives you just enough privilege, just enough of the time, which again deals with a whole range of things that we're also talking through today about misconfiguration. And finally, designing and implementing and running with the assumption that every element of your system can be breached and has been breached either deliberately or accidentally. So that's sort of a bit of context. I know it sounds strange to talk about zero trust when we're talking about configuration, but I think it underpins everything. And as a strategy, it really does lead into what you should be doing. So the clicker is working. Fantastic. I hear a lot of people tell me that they don't think Microsoft is a security company, and this is where we currently position our security solutions across these four different pillars. You'll be very pleased to hear I'm not going to try and cover the whole lot, but I would say that if people don't think of Microsoft as a security company, despite leading multiple analyst evaluations, it's something you should be thinking of. So again, point here is just really don't assume that Microsoft isn't a security company. We saw 40% year-on-year growth in our security business last fiscal, and for the first time it was called out by Satya Nadella in our earnings call. It is something that is hugely important to us, and that we've been investing $1 billion in for the past few years, certainly more than 5 that I've been saying that line. Back to what you should do then, and I think this is key really to what we're all talking about today. And we can talk about technology, we can talk about all the wonderful whizzy stuff we've got until we're blue in the face. But realistically, if you're doing it in the wrong way, if you've got the wrong things in mind, if, as has been mentioned already, if you've, looking at putting security in afterwards and just getting stuff up and running, you're taking the wrong approach. I'm going to be bold and say it's a huge amount harder to try and bolt on security to an existing service than it is to actually get it right from the start. So the best thing I can say for you to do here is, it's almost like the old joke of, oh, you want to be secure? Well, you don't want to be starting from here and asking for directions from somewhere else. But on this one, again, it's think of what you're trying to do. From the very inset of your project, start to consider the foundational architectural decisions you're going to make. So start to consider what you're doing around identity in particular, the governance around that identity, and have a strategy that actually you can point at and say, that is our strategy for our architecture, and include security in that. And then on that, you're building out people, processing, technology. And this, again, the observant will notice this top 10 best practices actually has 11 things on it. However, of those things, 3 of them are technology. The other 7 or 8 for the observant is around people, process, or the foundation on which you build. And again, I am going to spend some time on this because I really think this is the foundation. Get this right and things will be a lot easier. There's some great resources in here. This is the distilled wisdom of Microsoft from helping our customers, and it's constantly evolving to say this is the sort of thing you should be considering. So those best practices, absolutely critical. In terms of what else you should be doing around this, then Sentinel is getting a huge amount of attention at the moment. I'm going to skip over this, actually. I think people, if you want to know more about Sentinel, come and discuss with us, come and discuss with Bytes, because the main point here is that Sentinel isn't just looking at threats. It's also looking at behavior. It's also looking for configuration. It's also looking for threat and vulnerability management on your machines. It is something that can help you with all of those human mistakes and the misconfiguration that we've been talking about throughout the session. It isn't just about preventing threats or detecting threats. It's so much more than that. What are we doing with regards to a unified SecOps experience? Again, this is helping people to do their jobs. This is helping the SecOps professionals to actually get their job done. And I think it's hugely relevant to this session. The reason being is when I speak to SecOps professionals and when I speak to recruiters as well, it seems to be that the biggest challenge we've got at the moment is alert fatigue. And almost the point that David made, this idea of constantly being told you need to do this, you need to do this. Hey, my XYZ system is pinged up and there's this high priority alert that needs to be dealt with right now and it's the most important thing. And then you've got different systems telling you the same thing. You've got your mail system telling you the same thing. You've got everything telling you the same thing. This is where you need to pull it all together. And again, I know I'm sounding like a cracked record on the need for a Seymour saw here, but this can fundamentally make your organization a huge amount more secure and a huge amount more resilient to configuration mistakes and user behavior mistakes as well. So again, this is about making your SecOps team more effective, more efficient, which helps avoid them making mistakes. Do you know what? I'm going to skip over this one. I don't really want to talk too much more about Sentinel, but I do want to quickly make the note that Sentinel has gone from a not existing 2 years ago to being a leader in the Forrester Wave security analytics platform evaluation. Again, and it's been called out as having the strongest strategy with Microsoft. So I know that sounds like marketing. It is relevant here, I believe. What I do want to talk about now, though, is really Azure Security Center. So getting into the nuts and bolts of securing your Azure environment. How do you get started with Azure Security? And the first thing to do, if you haven't already done it, is turn on Azure Security Center free. The reason for doing that is that will give you visibility of your Azure Secure Score and also give you visibility of your Azure Security recommendations. To David's point as well earlier, this isn't just Azure. We call it Azure Security Center. We call it the Azure Secure Score. This actually protects workloads wherever they are. If it's Linux VMs on AWS, GCP, or SQL servers on-prem, you name it, we protect workloads wherever they are by using Azure Security Center combined with Arc and Azure Recommender. None of our major clients exist solely in Azure. Everyone has a strategy that leverages aspects of multi-cloud, hybrid, and our approach recognizes that. And again, it sounds slightly strange for Microsoft to say we secure anything wherever it is. We now have multiple flavors of Defender, defending all parts of infrastructure no matter where they're stored. So that's SQL servers, that's VMs, that's Kubernetes containers, that's IoT. And again, there's also network security is a huge part of this. And the configuration elements there, I'm not going to try and preach because you're going to hear from some absolute experts in this area later on. But network security is something, again, that we can handle. Having a look at what Defender actually does, though, this provides a cloud-native XDR, that's Extended Detection and Response solution for Windows and Linux servers, containers, serverless workloads that Azure and other hybrid customers have widely adopted. It uses this intelligent security graph, this thing that sees 8 trillion signals a day in it, and uses that to identify when stuff's happening, when stuff's misconfigured, and help you to take action around it. One thing that powers this is Azure Arc, and Azure Arc is a hugely interesting thing. You can tell I'm sort of compressing myself here as I go to make sure I keep myself honest in terms of time. This is what Arc does, is allows for this simple governance posture and continuous cloud posture, security posture compliance management, and also automation from a single pane of glass. And this isn't just for threat detection or security. Again, it's the full soup to nuts of the automation and management of your infrastructure, not just on Azure. This uses the security graph, but we also partner with the likes of Qualys to input into the vulnerability assessments here, which is included free of charge and needs no further licensing. However, if you want to integrate other vulnerability management solutions, Arc does this for you too. So again, this isn't even scratching the surface of what Azure Arc can do, but fundamentally it's bringing together your visibility, your automation, your threat detection, your posture management, and your secure score into a single pane of glass. I mentioned secure score, and I just want to make sure everyone on this call is using secure score. So I probably should have had that as my poll question instead. This is a free service that gives you visibility into your current security posture. Through Azure Security Center, it enables you to actually take action. It helps you to identify and perform the hardening tasks recommended to you as best practices and implement them across your virtual machines wherever they are, data service, and apps. It includes managing and enforcing security policies and making sure all Azure virtual machines, non-Azure servers, Azure Platform as a Service services are completely compliant with your policies, which come from best practice from Microsoft. So Security Center provides you with the tools you need to have this bird's eye view on your workloads and with focused visibility on the totality of your infrastructure. It's often hard to know, again, to the points we've already made, it's often hard to know where to go first and what steps to take first to harden the different workloads you've got. As your Secure Score reviews your security recommendations and then prioritizes them for you, telling you what will have the biggest impact on your score, so you know which recommendations to perform first. So if the problem or Secure Score identifies that you've got a problem with identity, and if you're not using multi-factor authentication, I can almost guarantee you that the first recommendation with the biggest impact on your environment will be to turn on multi-factor authentication. Then it gives you a reason to go and do that. It gives you the argumentation you need to say, we are behind the curve on this. This is something that the industry recommends. This is something Microsoft best practice has learned to recommend. And it gives you that insight to go and have that conversation. Again, MFA is a Mickey Mouse example. When it comes to looking at the hardening of your SQL servers, no matter where they might be, that might be a different kettle of fish. And then when you combine that with the security recommender reports that come out from Azure Recommender, it gives you the details into the precise actions to take, the configurations you need to change, the subscription it needs to change into, and the virtual machine that is actually needing some attention if it is a virtual machine. So again, Secure Score, as your Secure Score in particular, is something that if you do one thing, I hope that you go and start to understand your Secure Score, and from there you take action on it. So there's a couple of Secure Scores that Microsoft provide. There is Microsoft Secure Score, which is looking at Microsoft 365 estate, and this is doing the same as Azure Score, but looking at your tenant. So this is telling you what actions you should take to secure your Microsoft 365 tenant. Again, with the visibility of impacted users, how you should tell them what's going to happen to them, and how you should prepare to roll that out. Secure Score for Azure is doing the same thing. It's telling you what the impact of your intervention will be on this. We've got a great blog around that. I'll make sure, well, in fact, you're getting these slides. So there's a link to that in that just explains how to get started with Azure Secure Score. And as for why you want to do it, well, for me, it's this quote on the left, really, which is from a customer telling us that they've used it to report up to the board on and use it as a security KPI to say, this is what Secure Score was. I'm going to improve it to this. This is what I need to do to get there. And people have actually used this to secure additional budget for security projects. And again, for me, this is something that can help you to find those misconfigurations, find those issues, and secure budget and give it visibility to actually do something about it. So we've taken 14 minutes so far. Just want to leave you with this single thing to wrap up with as well. So go and find out your Secure Score. Go and turn on Azure Security Center free. It's free, and it will tell you what you need to do and give you that visibility. But if you need to know more about Microsoft security, again, here is a load of resources. I'll leave you with this as the resources for where to learn more. Now, hopefully, you've got the reasons to learn more. And the final thing, those Azure Security 10 best practices. For me, that's foundational. For that, that is something that, well, it doesn't really matter if you're using the Microsoft recommendations, as long as you've got something that gives you a foundation, people, process, and technology, and work from there upwards for preference. That's going to give you a great experience. Thank you. I think David, we've given you 5 minutes for questions then.
Yep, bang on. Thank you, Nick. So first thing to share with you, in actual fact, just before I share that, we've had a few emails in just saying that there's been some buffering and stuttering on the stream. I've had a little fiddle with mine and got a few people to check it. If you click on the little cogwheel in the bottom right corner, the stuttering mainly seems to be people on Virgin Media for some reason. But you can click on the cogwheel and take it off automatic from a quality point of view and just wind the quality down a little bit. And that seems to settle it down. I've only had one little chink sort of since I did that. It's a bit weird though, because when you click on the cogwheel, the box opens up, you set the quality, but everything's black in it. If you hover over, you can see the text and it goes pale blue and you can see which quality you're selecting. With the exception of the very small print that Nick just showed, if you go for 288 or 480p, then everything is still perfectly visible, so it's all good. But just if you are having any problems with it buffering or stuttering, give that a shout, please, people. Like I said, making that change seems to have worked for anybody who said they've got an issue. So Nick, first things first, your poll question. Which Microsoft Azure security are you most interested in? Basically, a neck and neck tie between Azure Security and Azure Sentinel.
Great.
I will get my gratuitous plug-in first, which is, it's almost like we thought ahead when we created an Azure Sentinel managed service, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
So that people could wrap a managed service for their SIEM solution around that. But is that typical from your point of view? Is that what you'd expect to see?
Yeah, to be honest, exactly that. We normally see security. So in other sessions, we've seen Sentinel be quite a way out in front, and that does lead to the natural question. I mean, it's new, it's shiny, it's great. It is, again, evaluated by Forrester as being leading, which is fantastic. Exactly to your point, though, if this is net new for people, if people haven't run a SIEM or a SOAR before and are just starting out in their journey towards a SOC, then they will need help to make sure that they run it in the right way. Yes, we provide the right hunting scripts. Yes, there's a GitHub that can help you to understand and learn from others around this. But agree to your point, David, this is something that, again, if I were looking to set this up, I would also be looking for a partner to help me. So, and again, Bytes with a managed SOC, I think personally that's the right way to do things, or certainly something you should be evaluating.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say, I mean, don't get me wrong, tools like Sentinel are fantastically self-sufficient now in terms of what they can do. But for as long as I've worked in the industry, anybody who is expecting a SIEM tool of any kind to be a magic bullet for spotting things in advance before they happen will only ever be disappointed. It either needs some internal resource or an external resource to work with them on it, doesn't it? Ultimately, you've got to put some effort into it.
Completely. And again, despite all the automation and just to look at Microsoft Defender for endpoints, for servers or just for endpoints, again, it's the same thing. We've seen customers that have said, right, this is fantastic, this is brilliant. I've got all this automatic remediation and it's left me with some alerts. And I don't have the in-house expertise to go and deal with these huntings and alerts. So again, it is it is something that you actively need to plan for too.
Now, go on.
Sorry. I was going to say, it's great to hear about Azure Security Center as well, because for me, if people go and turn on Azure Security Center and start looking at that as your secure score, that for me is a real result, because it starts to give people that visibility to understand where there may be misconfiguration or room for improvement. So yeah, that's really good to see.
So we have had a question in, and actually you've just kind of almost answered it, but not quite. So how can customers take advantage of both Defender and Sentinel? As you said, Defender's got all this auto remediation, all this kind of stuff in it. Why both?
Yeah, indeed. It's a great question, actually. And we are seeing a lot of customers saying, hang on a minute, I've got 365 Defender over there, and I've got everything I need from E5, which is wonderful. And I've got my Sentinel over there, which is acting as my SOAR, but I'm getting SOAR capabilities from Defender 365, and I'm getting SOAR capabilities from Sentinel. Do I pull all the things together? And yes, you can, but the slight warning there is that you pay for ingestion. So I would say that, work out what you need to ingest into what platform. If you manage from Defender, great. I'd leave it on Defender in all honesty, and make sure that your alerts, and you can also ingest 100 meg of data free per month per user if you're on E5. But announced at Ignite was a new feature which actually merges Sentinel and 365 Defender into a single pane of glass. So you can start your hunting in Sentinel, start your incident management in Sentinel, pivot across to 365 Defender and not know about it. So it's, for me, that was almost the missing piece of the jigsaw that says, that answers the question, do I need to ingest everything into Sentinel as well as having Microsoft 365 Defender? And the answer is now no, thankfully. Okay,
and that is perfect timing for our 20 minutes, including Q&A. So thank you, Nick. We will see you back at the end. Don't go anywhere, please. And I will hand over to Richard from Sophos to talk about the next stage of the journey. Richard, are you there?
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me. Wonderful. So By way of introduction, what I'll be talking about today, we're going to walk through what we're seeing in the security landscape as organizations start to move to the cloud. And really, I want to touch on how many of our customers are starting to respond to those shifts. You see, the big feedback that we tend to get from customers is as you're starting out that journey to the cloud, you're going to be using cloud provider platform tools to manage security alerts and configurations. It's what you'll be exposed to initially as you start to use those platforms. So it makes a lot of sense. But those cloud environments, the other main piece of feedback we constantly receive is they can be quite busy, noisy places in the first place. So while the platform tools providing great value, and we actually use them ourselves to enrich our own data when we're monitoring our own cloud environments that we're running our SaaS platform from, they do have the potential to overwhelm teams. So as you kind of go down this path, as we talk about misconfigurations more through the session, think about how you're going to respond to security alerts, how you will identify the top risks, the top priorities. And if you've got skill gaps, kind of temporarily or sort of medium long term, that you might end up having challenges fixing those gaps in security. So you see, without the kind of appropriate tools to really thrive in the cloud, if you like, unlock all those efficiency benefits, you're likely to hit your wall, if you like, your limit. So it's going to cause you to either slow down migration or expansion, which no one wants to do. You want to be the enabler in that transformation, or unfortunately, other teams might find workarounds around security, which obviously we don't want as well. So security can go faster, right? It can do that without overwhelming your teams as well. And that is what I really want to touch on today. So if I advance my slides. Wonderful. So first, I just want to touch on the business shift going on here. Probably not a surprise to a lot of us, in that constant search for ways to improve productivity and efficiency. Cloud's going to be the great enabler there. Efficiency's going to be realized through that migration of data applications into the cloud. So, the benefits of being able to work anywhere now, lower cost of operation, improved performance, scalability. That's what the business will be signing up to, will be chasing ultimately from cloud benefits. But the environment shift here can make it hard for security to keep pace with those services. You will expand as you expand your use of the cloud. You're going to now generate a growing attack surface area. You're going to have multiple cloud environments, multiple accounts as you start to segment those environments for best practice as well. And you're going to be introducing, newer services, things like containers, serverless, for instance. Couple that, also these environments are going to be dynamic, often elastic. You'll be introducing change and maybe risk, daily, even hourly in some cases if you've got a development team. So understanding what you have running at any given time is a big challenge for a lot of our customers, or our new customers, should I say. And couple this with, you now got new ways of deploying software supporting infrastructure as well. So as you potentially start to adopt methodologies like DevOps, you're going to now be able to, or teams will now be able to automate the creation of infrastructure and carry out configurations on that infrastructure, often without security teams' knowledge in the first place. So for the first time now, we need to operate security, when we're not at the hub of that activity as well. Now, couple this with the attacker shift that's going on. And I mentioned before about the importance of understanding misconfigurations, but also laying in context in our earlier talk. So what you've got now is the challenge that automated attacks, that speed and agility that attackers have, the challenge that brings to security. And you can see here from this little chart around how quickly attackers can now identify your weak points in configuration. And this was from a recent Sophos Labs research project, but it's just demonstrating from the point at which a new VM was put online, how quickly an attacker could identify it and start performing brute force attacks on those VMs. So in less than a minute, an attacker can identify you and start to trying to exploit vulnerabilities. So the threat, very real here. Obviously, I'm sure a lot of you don't live in Sao Paulo, but even in London, incredibly short window for your security teams to respond to these threats. But there are no headlines, unfortunately, for the businesses that are successfully defending themselves against the thousands of breach attempts every day. This isn't a doom and gloom story. We are winning. It's just not PR fodder, if you like. So this is largely due big significant improvements in cybersecurity. And so security can really be the enabler in your cloud transformation. It can support your teams to go faster, and their ability to match, if you like, the agility of cloud services and the methodologies you might adopt to stop your teams from hitting the wall. We want to really turn security into the enabler, not necessarily the cost center, if you like, for security. So to release your team from some of those biggest challenges affecting their ability to go fast, this is what I would recommend you think about as kind of a three-step plan initially. So think about visibility, having the tools to make it possible to view security posture across multi-cloud environments, across multi-account environments, as well as you start to segment them for best practice. That is a huge saving. And it's not just in terms of response times, but also think about staff training and onboarding times. If they haven't got to learn new UI and traverse from console to service to other console, it's going to all cut down the time and improve their ability to perform kind of strategic projects as well, and not just be in the weeds dealing with alerts. To couple with that, think about how you might close that skill gap. Cloud platform services, as we mentioned, really helpful, but can be quite noisy for those teams. So tools that are going to help you identify the critical alerts and either provide detailed guidance to fix the issue, the kind of the who, why, what, and how, or provide automatic remediation. They're going to be keys to your agility. And then lastly, think about how you're going to identify the weaker signals. As attackers are increasingly now, as we're finding, are moving to hands-on keyboard, and this is kind of couples to Dave's point earlier around how they're seeing an increase in forensic investigations across environments. As attackers increasingly move to those hands-on keyboard operations, your teams now need to be able to hunt, detect those sort of suspicious, weak events, if you like, before they become a breach and before they become strong signals, if you like. So think about how you might approach that. Now, to build a scalable base, if you like, for your cloud transformation, our approach is to start by getting the basics right. Start with that comprehensive visibility. You need to gain visibility, like full visibility of what is being added to your environment, what's being changed, reconfigured, removed, to help reduce any business risk created initially through those misconfigurations and those security vulnerabilities. So to do that, adopt a security monitoring tool to identify those weaknesses in configuration and make cloud security posture management a key priority in that cloud journey. Then, where you can, continue to use workload protection, agents to detect malware, ransomware exploits in those cloud workloads. Data loss, data leakage, be interesting to get your feedback on this, but that is all the time when we speak to customers in the industry, the number one concern for a lot of organizations. So having that ability to protect your data is a key one. And then use EDR, XDR services to identify threats across the environment and allow you to query the environment to hunt for those threats. And a managed threat response overlay here is going to be really important to you to make sure you can identify those weak signals that may be the early identifier of a breach. So what we'll do now, let's expand on cloud security posture management. I'll take you through each one of those kind of key areas. So let me just, there we are, wonderful. So the trick here is all about getting us humans away from the data as much as possible. to automate the visibility, the identification of risks, the remediation as much as possible within your environment. So look for tools here, and hopefully, this is good eye candy as a slide. You can see the different tools you might be looking to integrate with, but utilize tools that are using artificial intelligence to help you consolidate alerts across those cloud environments and risk profile them so your team can jump in straight away and fix the most critical alerts before they're exploited in a cyber attack. Then, if you have a development team, look at injecting security at all layers of development with integration of security checks in the development pipeline to identify vulnerabilities and things like off-the-shelf public registry container images may be used to build your applications, as well as the infrastructure as code templates that are going to help your teams to automate the deployment of new cloud infrastructure. And it's important to think, out in advance, where will your cloud migration strategy take you to this point around DevOps in particular? You may not need that now, but in 2 years' time, do you? So make sure you're aligning tools to your processes that are going to support you long term in that strategy. Then look at how you're going to automate security best practices. Look for tools that are going to map infrastructure automatically to compliance standards like GDPR or SOC 2 or ISO, for instance, and with policies there that are going to make it easy for you to make sense of the requirements and identify areas that need your attention. And importantly here, make sure you can, as we mentioned just a moment ago, ensure you've got the reporting in place within those tools so you can prove to auditors, so you can prove to senior management teams that your environments were securely configured in the first place. So a lot of the time it's about streamlining how quickly you can provide evidence to stay compliant in the first place. And then, it speaks for itself, I guess, but continue to monitor those configurations continually to ensure you stay compliant. And any misconfigurations that are introduced to the environment can be identified quickly, and you can respond to them quickly as well. Now, if I return back to our headline approach just for a minute, the automation of workloads, another key element to consider here. So think about malware, ransomware, they are just as prevalent in the cloud as they are on premises. We, in a recent survey that we ran, 59% of successful ransomware attacks where data was encrypted, that now involves data in the public cloud. So the need for antivirus, the need for protection from malware, ransomware, and so on, exploits just as crucial in the cloud as they are on-prem. So think about that. But just an important area of planning, I would say, is to plan or to review what workloads will move to the cloud and when they will move to the cloud. As you start shifting resources, you start refactoring applications, as you're deploying new VMs to support remote working and virtual desktops, look at how portable that protection is. Can it move from on-prem to cloud to private cloud? Can you manage it all from the same console? Is it gonna are you gonna have to learn new tools or not? Thinking that through is just going to ensure the best ROI when planning your cloud migrations, and it's going to make sure you reduce the resource impact as well on your IT security team in the first place. Okay, now, so automated protection, crucial, right? We've covered that. We want to be able to take care of as much as possible for you. But attackers are now increasingly moving to these more stealthy approaches to compromise your systems. So we really need to start to be able to identify the breadcrumbs, if you like, the critical weak signals of attacker behavior within your environment before they become strong signals. This is all about attackers starting to use the standard processes and maybe identity access management roles around your environment to look like a normal user and evade detection. So the big challenge here is the time, the resources available within teams usually make it quite impossible for an organization to carry out the 24/7 monitoring. And this is where a managed threat response overlay can really come into play. This is where dedicated teams of threat experts are going to proactively hunt for potential suspicious behavior across your environment to just ensure that you're not you don't have attackers within those environments laying low and planning their next attack. So think how you would juggle all of that. So the good news is security systems like this already exist. You're obviously talking today with the 3 vendors and the partner who can do this for you. And the Bytes team, I'm sure, is going to be happy to discuss them with you. As I leave this session today, what I just recommend is working through the key points that we've got here on screen that I've highlighted today, because that's really going to help you to start shaping the best approach for you, and it's probably going to fuel the best conversation with the Bytes team as well, and thinking maybe what you don't need today, but what are your plans for expansion as a business going forward, not just in the cloud. So think about what you might require and what security you're going to need to take on board in, say, the next 1 to 2 years. So think that through. Okay, and that is actually ahead of time, Dave. So we're doing very well today. So that wraps my session up. Thanks very much for listening to that part.
That's awesome. Thank you very much, Richard. So a couple of questions and a couple of points. First things first, poll question that the guys have all responded to, which is good. Are you aware of all public cloud accounts and environments used by your organization? I still, for the record, I think everybody heard me say this yesterday, but anybody who says they are aware of all of the public cloud accounts and environments is a bold statement. It is a bold statement. I think everybody heard me say that yesterday, but big up to 23% of you. However, I think the 50% that said they're aware of the majority is probably a much more honest answer. I'd certainly probably hedge my bets on that. What do you think? Yeah,
it's like saying I'm aware of all the toys that my kids put under the sofa and things like that. It's the ones I can see, I think, a lot of the times. We tend to find this as well. So it's interesting as we tend to use our tools like Cloud Optics is our cloud security posture management service, and the amount of times that organizations switch that on thinking that they do have the right visibility of everything, but will identify, say, servers that are being deployed by a DevOps team, for instance, that they weren't aware of, or test and dev environments that they might not be aware of. So I think it's you're often aware of the main supporting infrastructure that you're looking at, but are there teams now within those environments? And a lot of the recommendation always used to be, give cloud to your most forward-thinking kind of development teams and let them test and experiment, and then let's wrap security around this when the organization's figured out how we'll use cloud. It can often spur from there, whether there are teams in there that you're not aware of, or deploying new infrastructure you're not aware of, or if there are older systems that existed and were forgotten, say on a test platform, that everyone's since forgotten about. So I think definitely worth turning these things on just to check in a lot of cases.
And actually, on that note, it has to be said, we did a session yesterday morning on migration, which specifically covered off one of the elements we called out was that element of when you migrate, stuff gets left behind. And what you do with that, even if you end up migrating from on-prem to cloud to public cloud, and you do all of that, if you then go hybrid or move to a different public cloud, things always get left behind.
Yeah, and we actually see an interesting shift. So when we surveyed sort of 3,500 organizations, we actually found that the greater the visibility of within the environment, you may have less chance of being susceptible to misconfiguration attacks. But interestingly, we saw the attackers shift to start to try and exploit credentials and identity access management roles more, to start assuming roles within an environment, because that then becomes the softer target that you can exploit through, whether it's a phishing campaign or an IAM role, for instance. So it's important this isn't just about misconfigurations as such, it's about how does someone get access into my environment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think the other thing that you hit on, which is a real, something that I have a real bugbear about, is when businesses do something and then secure it rather than doing something securely. It's like, come on, guys, think ahead. I think still, I've been in this industry for over 20 years, and it's still the most common conversation I start with is people trying to wrap security around afterwards.
Yeah, definitely. we saw that happening. So when I talk about workload protection, we actually took a step to say, let's wrap CSPM into our workload protection product. So you've got servers today, you're going to move those servers to VMs in the cloud or containers eventually. So why don't we just include a core set of visibility features in workload protection, because you've just got it as you move. So at least you can start that process from the get-go, if you like, without having to invest in new tools.
Absolutely. All right then, thank you very much. We will move on to our next presenter, and we will see you back at the end, Richard. So thanks very much for that.
Thanks a lot.
Stuart, are you there?
I'm still here.
Excellent. So without further ado, I think we're still on time at the moment, which is a near miracle, frankly. I will hand over to you to run through your slides.
Thank you very much, and hopefully I won't wreck the timing too badly. Thank you very much. Right, let me find where the clicker has gone. Let's have a look. So I'm going to be talking about securing the cloud. Not that cloud is insecure, as I mentioned earlier. This is something which I think is really important to keep in mind, that it's not an inherently insecure thing. It can just be used in bad ways, let's say. And what I'll be talking about in this session is one of our slightly newer technologies in the portfolio. So we will take a slightly different view on cloud security that you might not consider that different when we're looking at what Checkpoint do and where we've come from. What are the risks? I apologise in advance. I think this is going to be a very common theme running through some of the slides and content today and for the rest of the sessions, and what this new offering does. So start with the common standard statistic that is compulsory for any sort of presentation. 75% of organizations are extremely concerned, or very to extremely concerned, about cloud security. Yes, that's kind of going without saying, really. When you look at the media, you see that cloud can be a fairly, let's say, volatile place for organizations to put their services and conduct their business. So 75%, I would expect maybe a bit higher to say that everyone should be concerned with their cloud security, whether it's secure or insecure. Having that awareness of what you're doing in public cloud and knowing that security is something you have to look after, that's good. That's a good place to start from. Why is that a good thing? So this is a graphic that I like to try and include in any presentation, because going on the amount of data breaches and security incidents that we see in the media, it's very easy to become desensitized to just how much data is being lost at the moment. Look at the numbers that you've got here. You've got 420 million records that have been lost, 162, 139, 250 million. These are ridiculous numbers that when you hear it in the news now, it's something that I've noticed to myself. You just think, oh, it's only a couple of 100 million lines that have been lost. It's not even a billion anymore. Do we need to worry about it? And yes, we do, because we're still talking about companies that I guess should know better and should have a better approach to security, don't take the responsibility of looking after the customer's data quite as seriously as they should. So what this indicates, this isn't specifically related to cloud. It's including failures in cloud and also more traditional networks as well. And these types of organizations, like I say, they're not small organizations. You can see in here some fairly big common names. And making sure that you're familiar with how to look after your data is a very important thing, and we'll get on to that. So is cloud secure? And as I started out with when we were answering some of the questions at the start, is it insecure? There is a bit of a misconception, maybe by the media, maybe by security companies, and maybe by some of the people that do comment on this type of thing. It's not insecure. Cloud is not an insecure thing. So it all depends on how you go about using it. And with the common Gartner quote, which even I've included in one of these slides, a lot of it is down to the users. So is it any different to how we treat a traditional data center network? Everyone is familiar with the challenges that you have in traditional networks and what tools are available with how to address the challenges in those networks. But when it comes to cloud, things can be deceptively similar and also very different. So is cloud secure? it depends on the level of visibility that you have when it comes to these platforms. So everyone's talked about this, and it's because it's a really important point to make. Visibility is one of the most common challenges that I speak to customers about. If you can't see what you've got, whether it's in cloud, whether it's in a data center, or if it's in a cupboard in your office, not knowing what's there is going to put you at a severe disadvantage to having any hope of securing it. Now, think about one of the most common security devices that you get outside of the world of IT, which is the security camera. They're so widely used because one of the most essential things in security is the ability to observe and track what's happening with your assets, be it physical assets, a shop, or IT assets. If you can't see what you've got, you are really going to struggle when it comes to securing it. And that's as relevant to cloud as it is with any other domain in IT almost. So a quick and possibly wildly inaccurate example, when it comes to public cloud, things are quite obviously different to the traditional way of doing things. So with the old way of doing things, when you're setting up a server in a data center, for example, you manage or rent an area of that data center, and you're responsible for setting up pretty much every single part of it, from providing the hardware and the cables and network infrastructure to getting that in a rack and dropping, if you're me, an endless supply of cage bolts into the air vents, which upsets many data center operators. I won't go into that one. I do know here as well that isn't actually a server that's being put into the rack. It is a shelf, but you can't be too choosy when it comes to gifts. So the traditional way, you have very high levels of control with what you're doing in that environment. The new way, if you can see here, it's got a little bit squished in my view, but when it comes to cloud, a lot of that repetitive and unnecessary work is abstracted away and hidden behind the curtain, so to speak. So if you could see here, this is actually an Azure command for deploying a virtual server or a virtual machine. So all you do is you run a command that says basically give me a virtual server, and you get it. But with all that convenience, a lot of the behind the scenes stuff is hidden away from you and automated. So you get a lot of convenience, but at the cost of visibility and control. Now, with the new way, in this example, it is deliberately vague and deliberately convenient, let's say. So I haven't worried about the security group, the public IP, or the networking. I just said, give me a server and don't worry about the surrounding concerns about that. But this is a common theme that runs through cloud. A lot of people go to cloud because of the agility and the convenience of it. And like I said earlier, the security element is something that people worry about, hopefully, at another time. It's not necessarily the first thought like it should be for a lot of, well, not just cloud deployments, but any deployment in general, really. So the risks, misconfiguration. This one you're going to hear a lot, and I apologize for bringing it up again. In fact, I think this stat has now been updated by Gartner through 2025, up to 99% of cloud security failures will be down to the customer. And this isn't, I suppose it is a fault, but it's down to the convenience of things. In the cloud, things are incredibly easy to provision, but because of that, security does take a bit of a back seat, not rightly, but that's what happens. Then if you consider that a lot of customers aren't just using a single cloud platform, they're using multiple cloud platforms. So with this, you get more buttons, more workflows, more tools, services, different views to manage them all in. That gives you a lot less consistency across these platforms. So you're not just worrying about setting up one service in one platform, you're worrying about setting up multiple services in multiple platforms with multiple tools, multiple views, reports, etc., and you just build on the problem and compound it. So how do you go about addressing any of these problems if you can't see them? And it all comes back to visibility. You've got to have visibility of what you're doing in these platforms to stand any chance of getting control of them and securing them. So I'm not going to go too much into the wider portfolio because Checkpoint have come a long way in the last 27, nearly 28 years, and we don't just do firewalls anymore. Some of the more relevant cloud products I'll be talking about in the later sessions, such as CSPM and our network security services running in public cloud. But what I'm going to talk about here is a new technology which takes some of the elements of our traditional technology that we've sort of built our reputation on and modified it to include that in public cloud and also non-cloud environments. So CloudGuard NDR, CloudGuard Network Detection and Response. This is a new offering that, as I say, takes in some of the elements of our traditional firewall technology and makes it more applicable to cloud environments and couples it with a cloud-based SaaS management solution. So there are two elements to it. There is a sensor, which is effectively part of our firewall offering, but we've made a more lightweight equivalent of that to run in public cloud networks. So you don't have to worry about deploying a full gateway to get the level of intelligence that you would in traditional checkpoint environments. And then there's what we call the Cyber Defense Center, the CDC, which is the cloud-based management piece where all of the intelligence happens, where we apply things like machine learning and signature-based analytics of the traffic and the attack patterns that we can see from the sensors that get contributed to the cloud environment. A big part of that is Threat Cloud as well. So our global shared intelligence database, which I'll cover more in one of the later sessions. The short version is anything that runs checkpoint technology can contribute to and draw from this global intelligence database that contains things like intel on botnets, command and control servers, APT crews, and simple hosts that are distributing malware or associated with phishing campaigns. Cover that a little bit more later on. So how this works, we've got a number of sensors that you can deploy, and they can either be dedicated sensors, which are tailored for cloud environments that can leverage things like mirroring or tap technology in the public clouds, or it can be a regular checkpoint gateway that has this element added on top of it. Then we've got the cloud-based parts where the intelligence comes in. So this is where we have a number of machine learning and behavioral analytics engines that look at not just signatures and indicators in the basic sense of looking at an IP and who's connecting to an IP address and whether it's good or bad, but looking at the wider context generated around that type of information. So if we see a host accessing an IP that is known to be malicious, that's something which is clearly bad. But if we see it maybe trying to connect to a number of hosts outside the environment, but also trying to probe things inside the environment, that's not something that a normal service would do. So if you've got a very simple web server running in an environment, you wouldn't expect it to start querying what permissions it has access to. So some of the other guys mentioned about lateral movement and privilege escalation via misconfigured IAM entities within the cloud environments. That's something that we can pick up on through the intelligence gained through the sensor. And we've got also the Threat Cloud part mentioned here, which is where all of this intelligence lives. The CloudGuard NDR Cyber Defense Center is something that bridges the gap between the sensor and Threat Cloud by giving you information which is contextually customized for the environment that it's running in. So it's not just saying this is a signature that's relevant to 100,000 customers across the world. This is relevant to your specific environment because customer X doesn't really care about your profile and your network traffic patterns. These are only relevant to you. So it's a very tailored approach. What is the value proposition? So this is a very marketing and formal slide. I apologize for that. But what it gives you is real-time detection of things that, as I say, are contextually relevant to your environment. It's not just saying here is an IPS signature which is relevant to everyone. This is something which is relevant and actionable in your environment. Through the CDC, the Cyber Defense Center, we can offer you guided investigation. We can extend that slightly through partners such as Bytes, and they can help you look at the amount of information that's contained in this. So whether it's looking at alerts that say we've identified a traffic pattern, or whether the team at Bytes have said something like we can add our intelligence and our expertise on top of this and say this is something you really need to look at with a level of urgency because it looks like it's a fairly relevant threat. That's all something that we can offer through the UI of the SaaS management platform. Automated NDR, so NDR, in case you're unfamiliar with it, network detection and response, we can automate the response to some of these alerts. So instead of adding to what came up earlier, the alert fatigue of having lots of different tools in these environments, we can automate elements of that in a number of different ways, whether it's integrating with some of the native tooling of the cloud platforms, or if it's leveraging the threat prevention technology available in a checkpoint gateway. We can pick up on some of the more advanced threats through the machine learning elements and automate blocking and neutering those threats in these environments. Detection use cases. So what can we pick up on? We can pick up on anomalous traffic patterns. So leveraging machine learning, we can establish a baseline for what is considered normal in your environment. If we see something outside of that, such as a host or a service that starts port scanning to see what's available, where it can potentially pivot onto and then start assessing other areas of the network, we're able to pick that up. Also, leveraging information in Threat Cloud, we know about a huge number of bots that exist out on the internet. So if we see any of your services trying to contact known C2 or botnet masters, we can pick up on that and shut that down very quickly. Vulnerable and infected assets. So again, leveraging the information from Threat Cloud. If we see a particular signature trying to be leveraged against something like an old, outdated, unpatched server, we can pick that up and say, normal traffic patterns wouldn't try and exploit or send this type of traffic to an old service of this type. Therefore, there's a high probability that this is going to be malicious, and we enhance the context that we're already building around the other assets and the traffic patterns in that network. Network recon, it's fairly common practice that once someone's got a foothold in your network, they want to see what they've got and what they can leverage in the environment. So things like port scanning, seeing what other services they can access, any vulnerabilities that are present, lateral movement, all build to the context that we're trying to construct in this environment. Suspicious user behavior. This is a really important one. This is where we can pick up on people trying to elevate their privileges in an environment. So you might only expect to see one particular user on a particular service in a cloud environment. If we see admin or root or other unknown users trying to be accessed or log on interactively for services which are otherwise completely autonomous, that could be another flag and something else that we can highlight using this machine learning element and technology in the environment. Skip ahead onto suspicious data exfiltration. If you've got a service which normally generates a fairly predictable amount of traffic in an environment, but then you start seeing a huge peak, that is again something something of an anomaly rather, that we can pick up on and generate alerts and reactions to, which leads nicely onto this graph. This is something which you probably haven't seen before in terms of checkpoint reporting tools. This allows us to identify from a perspective of traffic utilization any anomalies. So in this example, you've got a fairly routine traffic pattern where you've got obviously at the top of these graphs fairly low levels of traffic early in the morning, late at night. Then the majority of your traffic comes during the day. What we've highlighted here is this black square, which is showing that we've had 80 gig of traffic inbound to the environment, which, again, going back to the profile that we've generated, is considered extremely anomalous. Now, you might expect to see, for an attack scenario, lots of data leaving the environment, but it's not uncommon for attackers to download tool sets or other assets into the environment to assist in their probing and their spreading and the lateral movement within the environment. So anything like whether it's inbound or outbound and anomalous, we can pick up on that and we can generate these automatic alerts and triggers that allow you to take automatic responses to tidy that up if it's something that you do want to automate, or allow for further investigation using the tools available in the Cyber Defense Center, the CDC. I'll wrap that one up there. Almost on time for a couple of questions, I think, Dave.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. So just make sure, because I've lost my clicker. I don't think I actually need it at the moment. So we have had a couple of questions. Well, let's go through the poll results first. They all correctly stated that misconfiguration is the majority of security issues in cloud, which is good. Do you use third-party solutions in public cloud environments? 2/3 said yes, 1/3 said no. So that's all right. That's interesting feedback for everybody, a bit of interesting background. Just in terms of questions, we have had a couple. Let me just trawl back through, make sure I don't miss anything. He says, just making sure everything's there. No, they've been question light on this session, is the honest answer. They've been a little bit question light. So what have we got? So really, I mean, I think you've kind of covered this, but you know, what challenges do customers typically come up against when they first start? would be a question. And then once we've done that one, if we kind of bring the rest of the group in, and we've got a couple that we can just tackle as a group.
Yeah, so coming from this is probably more of a checkpoint angle than anything else. A lot of the customers that I talk to are trying to take their existing technology into public cloud. And within that, there are sort of a further division of customers who want to adopt different approaches to moving into public cloud. So some people want to go lift and shift, where they take what they've been running with for the last 20 years. They don't want to change it, but they've heard cloud is fancy and full of different benefits. So they will pick it up, try and drop it into cloud, and they want to know how their security solution can move with them. Something that I'm going to cover in a later session, but the short answer is you can do that with Checkpoint. That's completely fine. But there might be more graceful approaches that you can take with either some of our newer technology or mixing some of the technology we've got with what's available in the public cloud to achieve better things, rather than just saying, here is a VM, put it in public cloud. Hey, look, I'm in cloud. That's one of the common things that we come up against. Of course, there are customers who are going for a cloud native approach and they want to re-architect everything and take advantage of some of the newer tools that are available in cloud. And from third-party vendors like the ones that we've got here today. So a real mixture that we get from our customers, definitely.
Okay, no, that's cool. All right, thank you for that. Okay, let's bring the rest of the bin if everybody's around. Here we go. So we're all on screen. The gruesome foursome. Nick, just one. We have had one question that I'll go back to, which is hopefully you're not going to go, oh, I hate you for that one. But I think it is a good one, which is somebody's posed the question that secure score sometimes feels like a little bit of a moving target. I guess that's because security doesn't change, right? Is the quick answer. But security doesn't stay the same, rather. It does change. Yep. That's the point.
Indeed, no, completely to that point. As I say, it's more of a moving target on Microsoft 365 secure score, because that depends what you've got lit up. So that you've got your numerator of your current number of points and your denominator on that one, and the denominator changes as you bring more and more things into scope. So as you add more services, the denominator gets bigger, which means your secure score changes, your recommendations change. Exactly to your point, as you'd expect. It is a moving target deliberately. And it's continuous security posture management. So it's what you'd expect.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So we've got a few questions for the group, 3 for us to cover off. Kind of for you first, Nick, in terms of this. I mean, what trends? And then I'll get your other guys to chip in, but they're fairly specific, if you see what I mean. So I'm not sure if you guys will have anything to add. But Nick, you first. What trends are you seeing in Azure security at the moment? You know, what trends have we got? I'm going to try and keep you to 2 or 3 minutes, by the way. Sorry, otherwise we're going to horribly overrun for the next sessions.
Okay, that's great. I mean, in terms of what we're seeing, you know, it's massive interest and massive uptake in Sentinel, and also log analytics. Interestingly enough, those are the things that are really we're seeing people run to, because they are wanting to get insight into what's going on in their overall estate, and Sentinel's a great answer for that. The other things we're seeing recently, and this plays nicely actually with what Richard was saying as well, was the automated attacks are meaning that we're seeing a lot more people put investment into storage protection, for example. And again, I think we found the same. In fact, Richard, I think we referred to your Brazilian example as well, of being popped in 58 seconds. You know, it's one of those, if you put storage out there on the internet that's not protected, you need to do something to protect it. Otherwise, someone will find it and take advantage of it very, very quickly. So we're seeing a big uptick in interest in Azure Defender for storage. We're also seeing a really large growth in Azure DDoS protection subscriptions increasing, because we're seeing active exploits where people are trying to hold large organizations to ransom through DDoS attacks. And again, the DDoS protection just seems to be a natural thing that people are running to on that one. So those are sort of the trends that we're seeing. Again, it's sort of driven by what's going on out there in terms of the threat landscape, which it's constantly evolving. But those are the trends we're seeing.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Richard, kind of handing over to you. Again, just in terms of filtering through the customers, what are some of the the popular security auditing benchmarks and tools, and how can we adapt them to what we're trying to get out of security?
Yeah, we're seeing. I think it starts a lot with multi-cloud. So I know the cloud providers have a lot of tools in there already. We are seeing an increase in awareness, I would say, probably of things like CIS benchmarks that give people that standard sort of best practice security policy that's not necessarily aligned to a specific compliance standard or such, but it does give them a good starting point. But what we do tend to see is the need to customize those tools. So having that ability to get in there, turn certain alerts off, to the point, some of the points we made a little earlier on, there can be completely valid reasons why storage is public or RDP is exposed, or why a misconfiguration is present in an environment. So you don't want to be alerted to that constantly once you're in. So yeah, I would say start with things like those best practice benchmarks. Obviously, there's things like SOC 2, PCI, or a whole range of different versions. But make sure you can customize those. Make sure they can map to your environments. Make sure you have policies that can map to your environments automatically, just to save yourself all of that workload, I would say. Big challenge a lot of customers have is that scramble to the kind of 6 monthly, yearly audit, and being able to kind of streamline that one and just drip that compliance maintenance, if you like, into your standard workflow is super important, we found.
Yep. Okay, cool. And Stuart, just a couple for you. We've already talked a little bit about, what challenges they do. And you talked, and I did like the GIF. It came across very well on the stream of, the fact that it's an effort to install a physical piece of hardware, whereas it's a PowerShell script to engage something. I guess it comes back to the people element, doesn't it? People just don't think about it. They would almost for a sake of argument, oh, it's really hard work to put that server in. Do we need to do it? Oh, I need to shuffle the rack around to put additional servers in. Therefore, I'll make do with what I've got. Whereas in cloud, people just spin up stuff left, right, and center, and the challenges around that are very, very real, aren't they? Is that something? How would you comment on that?
Yeah, and it's a strange one again. So from a historical point of view, Checkpoint, obviously a lot of our customers are in the firewall space. That's where we've come from. It's what we've built our reputation on. So a lot of customers have very rigid approaches to security, where if they want something to be present on the internet, they will go through change control. Somebody will review it, open a ticket, make a firewall rule change, and open up a specific port to a specific IP. One of the things we find, and I find it particularly interesting, is the move to DevOps and automation approaches, where, like with the PowerShell example, you just run a command and you create a VM that's it's your server, it's provisioned, it's effectively in a rack. It is in a rack somewhere, it's just not one that you care about. It's got an IP and it's there on the internet, ready for people to start using, and also attackers to potentially start abusing. And it's kind of the difference of opinion of how to secure that from the traditional camp to the modern automated guys, are the people that are using things like infrastructure as code and building out various pipelines to do this. There's very rarely a middle ground between that. If I'm on a call with customers that have both kind of heads and experience points on it, then they're quite often not at conflict, but it's a case of, we want rigid security and we want fluid deployment opportunity to be able to just get on with work and make sure it happens without interruption. And fortunately, there are a number of tools that we can help with to bridge that gap. So you can bring very rigid security into a dynamic environment, and that can help bring the teams together. And that's something which is quite interesting to see on calls, where you've kind of acted as a mediator between the old and the new worlds.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Understood. So thank you, guys. Thank you very much for all taking the time to present this morning. I'm going to wrap up now from the questions and say thank you to all of you. In terms of next steps for everybody, so obviously we've got the rest of the event going on over the next today and tomorrow. really for us, you've all kind of responded to what you'd be interested in, and obviously Sentinel is up there, Secure Score is up there. But one thing we do have available, which is completely free of charge, is what we refer to as our cloud snapshot. And that's kind of an analysis of your public cloud infrastructure. And really, it just enables us to benchmark for you against known vulnerabilities and things like PCI, ISO 27001, GDPR, etc., just to make sure that your cloud environments, your public cloud environments, are configured as optimally as possible. It is a multi-cloud service. It is free of charge. It is ready to go. So I would kind of invite all of you to follow up with your account managers and have a look at that. Please do the feedback and make sure you do the feedback for us. And I hope you have a really good rest of the day. I'm going to get shouted at for not clicking on the slides again, because the How Bytes Can Help one is all in the wrong place, but never mind. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for bearing with us on the little bit of buffering and jiggling I think we had for the first 10-15 minutes. I know you all did manage to get back on okay, I think. So yes, thank you very much, and we'll leave you to have a good rest of the day.